Hi, my name is Tyler Pierce, and I'm going to be practicing my oral footnotes. So, to start off, we have Minotti Mike. Blizzard failed to make a stand for anything but China and money. A direct quote from what they said was, "A player comes into conflict with a country that does not value those freedoms. Blizzard should help to defend them. Instead, Blizzard offered Blitzchung up as a sacrificial lamb, proudly displaying his carcass to China, as if to say, 'Look what we did to him for daring to speak against you, so please do not punish us.' China is a massive country and economy, but just as the U.S. is subject to criticism, so is China." And end quote. Up next, we have Mike Pence criticizes NBA as wholly owned subsidiary of China. I quote a quote from the Vice President Mike Pence. He states, "In siding with the Chinese Communist Party and silencing free speech, the NBA is acting a wholly owned subsidiary of the authoritarian regime." That's a statement from Mike Pence, who is criticizing the NBA as being a wholly subsidiary of China. Up next, we have an article by the Human Rights Watch called "Hong Kong, Beijing Threatens Draconian Security Law." And a direct quote from this is, "The Chinese legislation's adoption of a formal decision to directly impose national security legislation on Hong Kong threatens the basic rights and freedoms of the city's people." Human Rights Watch said today that the law which the chairman of the National People's Congress almost certainly will enact will prohibit acts of spitism, subversion, foreign intervention, and terrorism, vague terms that the Chinese government has frequently used on the mainland to protect peaceful dissent. And quote from China saying, "Hong Kong people will now have to consider arrests and harsh sentences for protesting, speaking out, running for office, and other freedoms they have long enjoyed and struggled peacefully to defend." And this is what someone from the Chinese government had to say about the Hong Kong crisis that was happening just last year. Up next, we have an article by Core Philip Lee on China's expanding influence in Europe and Eurasia. I quote, "When rebutting criticisms of their choice to join the BRI, Italian officials claim that the European peers traded more and received more investment from China, justifying Italy's pursuit of its fair share as a national interest. However, in the same week, France secured several times the commercial value in agreements with China than Italy did, without signing on the BRI. In this respect, competition and disagreements over China has created tensions further to divide the EU members at the political level. Beijing's strategy to sow divisions is an intentional one, as it treats members differently and it creates its own circles of friends with regular contacts." End quote. Up next, we have an article by the Congressional Executive Commission on China, which is called "Freedom of Expression in China: A Privilege, Not a Right." I quote, for the average Chinese citizen, freedom of publication is actually nothing more than freedom to submit. Academics and editors of China's state-controlled publications are afforded somewhat less leeway than party officials, but still more than the average person. This group is allowed to publicly question the government policies in newspapers, interviews, and on the internet, and even to criticize them in private, government-sponsored forums. And this is the only way that people are able to criticize the actual government or the Communist Party. And the Communist Party, or senior members of the Communist Party, and one example of this grouping is Li Rui, a retired senior Communist Party official and a former member of Mao Zedong, who earlier this year published a letter in the Beijing magazine called the China Chronicle, calling for a greater democracy in China's government. And this was in the Freedom of Expression in China article. Up next, we have China's Rise from Agrarian Society to Industrial Superpower by Wen Yi of the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. And I quote, 35 years ago, China's per capita income was only 1/3 of that of sub-Sahara Africa. Today, China is the world's largest manufacturing powerhouse, and it produces nearly 50% of the world's major industrial goods, including crude steel, cement, coal, and vehicles, and industrial patent applications. China is also the world's largest producer of high-speed trains, robots, ships, tunnels, bridges, highways, chemical fibers, machine tools, computers, cell phones, etc. And that was an end quote from Wen Yi. Up next, we have Why U.S.-China Relations Are at Their Lowest Point in Decades by Usher Barbara Plett. And I quote, Joe Biden would be more inclined to revive avenues of cooperation. He's also campaigning on a get tough with China policy. It's a popular theme reflecting on extremely rare bipartisan and consensus that goes beyond the occupant of the White House. But Mr. Russell, who's currently vice president at the Asia Society Policy Institute, warns about unintended conflict, the buffer that has historically insulted the U.S.-China relationship. The presumption that the goal is to de-escalate and solve problems has been stripped away, he says. End quote. Next we have a article by the Human Rights Watch called World Report 2018, Rights Trends in China. Sorry, I can't speak right now. I quote, civil liberties in Hong Kong are increasingly being undermined by the growing interference of the central government 20 years after the city returned to Chinese sovereignty in 1997. Opposition political parties and their supporters faced greater harassment from our authorities in April. The company's registry rejected the application of the Hong Kong National Party on grounds that the promotion of the Hong Kong independence movement is against the basic law. During President Xi's visit to Hong Kong, local and mainland police follow harassed and arrested some peaceful pro-democracy protesters. Authorities further tightened screws on social media. In June, they shut down dozens of entertainment news and celebrity gossip social media accounts after calling on internet companies to actively promote socialist core values and stop the spread of vulgar sentiments. End quote. And that's every single quote I have right now. I know that I haven't been really working so hard on looking at the camera. I'm trying my best to get better at that at the moment, but this is all the oral footnotes I have. I'm still practicing, but I understand that this is going to be turned in very soon, so this is the last one I could do. So I hope it works, and thank you for listening. Bye.